So this For Whom the Bell Tolls book, right? We've had a lot of requests to take a look, and
Yeah.
we did. We checked out the book itself, and then, of course, a whole bunch of those reader reactions, to see what the buzz is all about.
And there is a lot of buzz. It's pretty rare for a debut novel to really catch on like this.
It's about this young woman, Lily. She ends up in the afterlife, but then, kind of unexpectedly, she finds herself in hell. And then she ends up taking a job there and gets involved with this demon named Belle.
Sounds kind of wild, right? Especially for a romance.
Yeah, it's being marketed as romantasy, so I guess we can expect a mix of romance and fantasy elements. And the afterlife setting, I mean, that's definitely not your typical heaven and hell kind of thing.
I was reading the description, and one thing that really jumped out at me was that Lily uses her customer service experience to process souls in hell. I don't know, that sounds kind of funny. But I wonder if it actually works in the story itself. But one thing we did see a lot in the comments was how emotionally deep the story is. It doesn't sound like it's just a lighthearted romance. People are talking about themes like healing and self-discovery, and even challenging preconceived ideas about good and evil.
Okay, so there's some depth there. Interesting. One review I saw actually called it a catfish book, which I gotta admit, I'm kind of curious about that.
Yeah, that's a hard one to explain without giving anything away. Let's just say there are some twists in the story, some surprises, maybe some characters aren't exactly who they seem, and the plot. Well, let's just say it might take you in some unexpected directions.
All right. Consider me officially intrigued. I did notice, though, looking at the reactions, some different opinions on the overall tone of the book. Some people call it a comfort read, and others say it's emotionally wrenching. Which is it?
I think that's a good illustration of how everyone brings their own, stuff to the table as a reader. What one person finds comforting might be really intense for someone else. It just depends on what you're bringing to the story as a reader, I guess.
We can't talk about this book without talking about Book Talk.
Yeah.
Right? It's all over social media, and it seems like a lot of people heard about it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think maybe all that online hype is inflating the positive reception?
It's possible. I mean, social media can definitely get people talking and influence what people decide to read. But I do think there's evidence that there's more to this book than just hype. A lot of reviews went beyond just, surface level praise. People got into why they connected with the characters and the themes. So I think there's something more substantial going on here. One thing that really stood out from the reviews was the world building.
Oh, yeah.
Especially how the author, kind of reimagines hell.
Yeah.
It's not like the typical fire and brimstone you might expect.
Right.
More like almost like a bureaucracy.
Yeah, I remember that from the description. That whole image of Lily, working a customer service job and sorting souls. Kind of a clever take on it.
Yeah, definitely not what you'd expect. And it sounds like that's a recurring theme, actually, throughout the book, taking these familiar ideas about, hell and turning them upside down.
Interesting. What about the demons? What are people saying about them?
A lot of discussion about the demons, especially Belle.
He's the love interest, right?
Yeah. And apparently he's not just your typical, bad boy. Reviewers describe him as being a lot more complex, even, vulnerable at times.
Okay, so not just the setting, but the characters are also a little bit different. What about the romance itself? Is it a whirlwind romance or more of a slow burn?
Most people seem to like that it's a slow burn. Sounds like the author really focuses on building that emotional intimacy between Lily and Belle, so the romance develops more gradually.
That makes sense given everything we talked about earlier about the themes of healing and self-discovery.
Yeah, for sure.
And I imagine those themes probably play out in the relationship too, right?
Oh, absolutely. It seems like the author really delves into the characters' vulnerabilities and how their connection, helps them both grow and change.
It really does sound like this Jaysea Lynn is on to something with this debut.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty impressive to see an author create this much buzz right out of the gate.
Totally.
And, another thing, I read that she has a pretty strong online presence, especially on places like Book Talk.
So she's really embracing that whole digital side of things.
It seems like it. And, it's a smart move, especially for a new author. It gives her a way to connect directly with readers, build that following, and even get feedback in real time. It's like a whole new way to interact with your audience.
So we've talked about the story and how it's different. We've talked about the characters. But what about the actual writing itself? How do people describe her writing style?
Well, there are definitely some mixed opinions on that. Some people really like it, praise that conversational tone. They find it really easy to read. Others, though, found it a bit simplistic.
Hmm.
even repetitive in places.
I guess that's always going to be subjective, though, right?
Yeah,
Some people want, more poetic language. Others just want a story that's clear and easy to follow.
exactly. Different strokes for different folks. But even those who weren't that crazy about the writing, a lot of them still said they were just hooked on the story.
So a real page-turner, even if it might not be winning any awards for, beautiful prose or anything.
Seems to be the consensus. But, beyond just being entertaining, it sounds like this is a book that could really stay with people.
Uh-huh.
I mean, there was a lot of talk about readers feeling seen, understood.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
Especially those who've dealt with some of the same things that Lily goes through.
Exactly. And that's always powerful, right, when a book can do that. Make you feel less alone.
Definitely. Speaks to the author's ability to create characters and situations that feel,
Yeah.
authentic, even within, this fantastical setting.
Yeah. I think one review in particular actually really captured that. It described the book as emotionally wrenching. Talked about feeling this deep connection to Lily's journey.
Wow, that's powerful.
It is. I mean,
Yeah.
it really makes you think about what it is about the story that resonated so much with that person.
Yeah.
Maybe Lily struggles with self-acceptance or the way she kind of navigates this new world, the afterlife and everything.
It's interesting to think about.
It is. It definitely seems like the kind of book that can evoke some strong emotions
For sure.
and leave a real impact on people.
I actually realized we haven't really talked much about romantasy as a genre. I mean, for people who aren't familiar with it, can you just give us a quick overview of what it is?
Sure. Romantasy, well, I mean, the name kind of gives it away. It's a blend of romance and fantasy. Usually involves a love story set in some kind of fantastical world, often with magic and mythical creatures and, those kinds of supernatural elements.
So basically, you can escape into this world of magic and adventure and get a good love story at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. And For Whom the Bell Tolls seems to tick all the boxes, right?
Yeah.
You've got that intriguing setting, the afterlife, plus the characters, the demons, and other supernatural beings. And then, of course, you've got that central romance between Lily and Belle.
And it sounds like the author's putting her own spin on things, too.
Yeah, for sure. It's not just rehashing those same old tropes, It feels like she's really bringing something new and interesting to the table, which is probably part of the reason the book's doing so well.
We've talked a lot about what makes this book popular and, emotionally resonant and all that. But do you think it has the potential to spark some bigger conversations, maybe even challenge some societal norms?
I think it definitely could. I mean, just looking at the themes, right? Mental health, trauma, and even the whole idea of good versus evil.
Right.
I mean, we already talked about how Lily's journey is all about self-discovery and healing,
Yep.
and how the demons are portrayed, especially Belle. It really does seem to make people rethink those traditional ideas of good and evil.
It's not all black and white.
Exactly. The author explores those gray areas,
Yeah.
and encourages readers to think more critically about their own, maybe biases.
The way the book deals with mental health is really interesting, too.
Yeah.
Sounds like Lily's struggles with anxiety and depression, they're not sugar-coated,
Right. It's not romanticized at all.
Right. It's treated as a real issue.
Which is so important,
Yeah.
especially considering how common mental health challenges are these days.
It's almost like the book is holding up a mirror to our own lives,
Yeah.
Yeah. And prompting these important conversations about mental health and self-acceptance and even just basic empathy.
And that's what makes it more than just a fun read, right?
Yeah.
It's using that fantasy world to talk about real issues,
Exactly.
to help people connect who might be going through similar things.
Before we move on, I wanted to circle back to that whole catfish book comment. Without giving anything away, can you just talk a little bit more about what that means in the context of this story?
Sure. Without spoiling anything, I think it really ties into the theme of deception, like how appearances can be deceiving.
Oh.
There are secrets in this story,
Mm-hmm.
hidden truths that come out as you read.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like the author is playing with reader expectations, making us question what we think we know about the characters and what they're really after.
So it's not just a straightforward romance then.
Not really. There's definitely an element of mystery
Okay.
and suspense to it.
It makes you wonder what's going to happen next.
Right, exactly. Who can you trust and how's it all going to work out in the end? I mean, that's probably part of what makes it so addictive, right? You just want to keep reading to find out.
It definitely sounds like there's a lot more to this book than meets the eye.
Yeah. It's entertaining, but it's also got some real depth. Makes you think, makes you feel things.
Yeah.
And it stays with you even after you finish reading.
So we've talked a lot about what works in this book, but I'm curious about the ending. Can you talk a little about how it all wraps up? I mean, without giving anything away, of course.
It sounds like the ending is pretty satisfying. Everything comes together, but it also leaves you with something to think about.
Hmm.
A lot of the reviews mention how emotional the ending was, how it made them reflect on the story's themes and even their own lives.
So it's not like a simple happily ever after ending.
Not really, no. It seems like the author is more interested in, exploring those complicated parts of relationships and how the choices we make can really affect us. There's definitely hope, but also a kind of bittersweet element to it.
That fits with what we've been talking about,
Yeah.
right? How this book has some real depth. It's not just a light, fluffy read. It's the kind of story that stays with you.
And that seems to be what a lot of people are saying. Even if they had some issues with, the writing style or the pacing, a lot of them still admitted that the book really made an impact.
It really does sound like Jaysea Lynn has created something special with this debut. I mean, she's built this world that feels both familiar and fantastical at the same time. And the characters, they feel real even though they're demons and supernatural beings and all that. And she's telling a story that's fun and thought-provoking and emotionally engaging all at once.
I think that's a great way to put it.
What do you think is the most interesting thing about this book?
I think it's how the author takes these familiar ideas, these tropes, and turns them upside down. Like, you think you know what to expect, but then she surprises you. The whole reimagined hell, the characters being so complex, the way she plays with the idea of deception, it all comes together to create something really unique.
You've definitely got me curious. I'm adding this one to my to-read list.
It's a good one.
If you're listening and you're interested in checking out this book, we've got a special offer that might just convince you to give it a try. If you use the link in the description, you can sign up for a free 30-day trial on Audible. That's right, you get 2 free audiobooks to start with, and you can cancel anytime if it's not for you.
It's a great way to experience the story.
We always love to hear what you think, so leave a comment below and tell us what intrigued you most about For Whom the Bell Tolls. Would you read it based on what you've heard today? And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more discussions on books that are, well, making waves. Until next time, happy reading.